to Slacks Cove. I'm Jenna Morton.
And I'm Tosh Taylor. And on today's episode, we're going to be chatting about this magnificent place with the magnificent Heather Fraser. Hello.
Hello. How are you guys today?
Oh, absolutely fabulous. You have brought us to an amazing place for sure.
Absolutely.
For those who are watching and listening, describe a little bit about where exactly we are in Slacks Cove.
Okay, so we're at the very end of Slacks Cove Road. And basically when you get here, you're here. So when you arrive at the top, this is the beauty that you have. If you are to turn around, you can see the Cumberland Basin, which is the uppermost portion of the Bay of Fundy. So we're basically in a little cove, they call it, and I guess that's how it's got its name, Slacks Cove. But from what I understand is because of its location, there was a lot of boats coming in. There was a lot of boats carrying precious goods. And so there probably was a lot of stories about fortunes lost and won in this cove, which is kind of exciting.
It is. It does have that very piratey kind of privateering feel to it. You feel very isolated. Although I'm sure back in the 1800s, you wouldn't have felt like this was such an isolated place. This was actually much more populated than it is these days.
And I think too, if you look at the way the cove is, it's almost like a semicircle, so it's partially protected. So in here looking out, you can see what's coming. So I think that would be the added advantage to being in here if you were protecting whether it's goods or whatever it was that you were trying to move on the Cumberland Basin. But the beauty of the rock is what's really interesting here is that they are sandstone cliffs, like what you see really across this area into Johnson Mills as well. And it's the fossils that are in the rocks, which are quite renowned here. And we've already done a little bit of walking and exploring here to see what types of fossils are here. So that's sort of another exciting part of the beach. Yes, you can comb for sea glass, which you were doing.
My pocket might be full.
I think Tosh and I were interested in getting to the rock to see what we could see in there. And of course, me with my background in trees and plants, it's like, oh look, there's trees, there's plants, and I love the fact that it's surrounded by beautiful red and white spruce. So again, that protection from the ocean waves and the wind, if people were actually in this cove back then with the boats and stuff moving up and down the basin.
Like you say, it's as much about this is an amazing spot because of the natural elements to it, not just the imagined stories of what pirates might have come through or the people who lived here. You know, there's a lovely little monument right at the top here before you come down to the beach, you know, recognizing the people came here in the 1700s. You know, this area has a long history, but obviously a much longer natural history. And yet these rocks and the fossils we've found already in them are fantastic. Can you maybe talk a little bit, Heather, about what people need to keep in mind if they're coming to visit Slacks Cove in terms of safety and fossils and hunting on the beach?
Of course, because this is a UNESCO designated heritage site. So really, just like our footpath that we're going to make in the beach with the tide out is really all you want to leave behind. So it's to explore and observe and take your pictures and be happy that you've been able to experience some of the fossils and the wildlife and so on that's here, but it's to leave it in its place, because it is a heritage site, which is probably why through the Fundy Biosphere it's an amazing place, because it's unique to the whole upper Bay of Fundy and the whole Bay of Fundy area.
It's interesting to me to think that someone had the job of driving around and finding all of these places to designate as amazing places. And once, like, you can see them on the map, you can see them in the brochure, but you really have to lay eyes on them to understand, because without a doubt, every time you're going to go, wow.
Yes, and what I find too, when you can see that there's definitely an elevation to this amazing place, and the beauty of it is it's warm at the top, and you come down the little path to the beach, and it's the coolness. And what I really enjoy about all these amazing places is the smells. The smells and the view, and today we have a beautiful view because the tide is out. It's clear sky, not a cloud in the sky. This would be a different place coming in the fog, right? So every time you would come and visit this, you would have a different experience depending on the weather and the time of year that you come and so on. So the amazing places are really to give you different points along that Sackville to St. Martin's area that's within the FBR to really showcase the beauty that we have that's off the beaten track a little bit.
Yes, like you said, we managed to make it here on a beautiful sunny day at low tide.
Exactly.
But even if you were to not time it perfectly, you come on a cloudier day or you come at high tide, there's a lovely ledge. You know, even when we got here today, some people were out sitting and taking photos. You can see how you could come multiple times and never tire of the beauty here.
Mm-hmm. And I think for people that are in the city, you know, and want to come to those places that aren't totally populated, you know, and just come like that couple that we seen from Nova Scotia with a book and a cup of tea and a coffee and just sit. You know, sit and listen, look for the bald eagles that are probably coming in with the tide for food. Like, it's just that place of peace, I find. And I guess that's the beauty of all of our amazing places within the Fundy Biosphere region.
Speaking of the bald eagles, what other kind of animal life would you see in this area?
Well, we are still in a forested area, so I would expect you'd see red fox and probably raccoon and porcupine because of all the trees that they would love to climb and eat. And even bears. We passed a lot of apple trees coming in the dirt road to get here. So I expect any animals that you would have in New Brunswick Forest would be here as well. It's just whether there would be enough food sources to maintain them. Right. So they might be those larger ones that would move through different seasons when there's food that's available to them.
Great. Well, I think we should just enjoy this spot and then head on to our next amazing place.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now you're going to find us on the beaches of Johnson Mills. I'm Tosh Taylor.
I'm Jenna Morton, and with us today we have Jordan Mills with the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming in to join us today. You're here to tell us a little bit about this amazing place of Johnson's Mills. Take it away.
So here in Johnson's Mills, we're in the upper bay of Fundy, so kind of the Shepparton Bay area. And what's super significant about this specific site is that every summer, between July and August, we get a massive influx of shorebirds. So they come here on a stopover on their way to South America as part of their annual migration. So we're really lucky to be here and get to see them stop over to feed on our mudflats here. So it's a really significant area for shorebirds. We get about 30% of the world's semi-palmated sandpipers, among other species of shorebirds. So it's a pretty spectacular place.
What does it feel like when you first get that sense, like the first few birds of the season? Do you get like one or two and everyone gets excited? Do they show up by the thousands? What's it like at the start of the season each year?
Yeah, so we'll usually get a few hundred to start off. So we've got staff here in June prepping for the season, and then around early July we start watching for birds every day. And yeah, it is always exciting to see the first small groups kind of show up. It's usually we'll place bets on the first day that they arrive, but yeah, it's generally between 50 to 100, and then once we start to see our first few birds, the numbers continue to grow until we're reaching the tens and even hundreds of thousands.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of this location and when the Nature Conservancy decided that it would be a good idea to have you located here so that people can come and safely watch the birds?
Yeah, so the center opened in the early 2000s. I believe our first opening day was July 1st, the year 2000. So I know NCC has been securing land in the area since the 90s because it is a significant spot, and our conservation work is very much needed here to help restore and protect the habitat that's so important for the shorebirds. So we've been here since the 2000s, and we're open to the public every season. And yeah, just like you said, we're here to make sure that the shorebirds have a successful stopover and that people get to experience and connect with nature in a way that's safe for them and safe for the environment as well.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means? If someone hasn't been here before and they're listening to this, watching this, thinking, oh, I really want to come, are they able to go down onto the beach? Talk a little bit about what the space is like and what people can expect if they come to visit.
Yeah, so from July to August, we are open to the public. Generally, we advise the best time to come out is from 2 hours before to 2 hours after high tide. That kind of coincides with the period the shorebirds are most vulnerable. So for most of the time that they're here, they're out on our mud flats feeding, and they get pushed up onto the shore by the water because they follow the tides. So when they're actually up on the beach roosting, they're extremely vulnerable to not only predation but human disturbance. So though the best time to see them is when they're up on the beach and they're most vulnerable, we do close the beach 2 hours before to 2 hours after high tide. So for visitors who haven't been here before, the best bet is to come to the center, talk with our interpretive team, and we'll let you know where the best spots are, kind of some good birding ethics and how to view shorebirds safely, and also provide lots of information about the shorebirds and why they're here and the significance of this site.
You mentioned the term stopover. So they are obviously taking a mighty trek. Can we talk about the distance with start, stopover, and then to their final destination? How many kilometers is that?
Yeah, so they've come here on their way down to South America after finishing their breeding season in the Canadian Arctic. So they use the Bay of Fundy as a pit stop, kind of a refueling station. So they come here. They need to double their weight in about 3 weeks, and they do that because it's about a 3-day, 5,000 to 7,000 kilometer nonstop flight over the Atlantic Ocean. So they'll burn half their body weight just on that trip alone. So that's why this site is so significant. They time their arrival with an abundance of invertebrates. We call it mud shrimp Crophium volutator. So they time their arrival here with an explosion in population. It happens annually with the Crophium. So they have a buffet essentially to refuel, double their weight, and then hopefully make it to the next leg of their journey, which is to South America.
It sounds like you're a tour guide for birds. I love it. They're like, I'll stop over and they're going to have a buffet. And it sounds so fun. It must be so exciting to be here and witness that migration happening.
Oh yes, absolutely. When we get our large numbers, so on peak days when we have between 90 to 120,000 shorebirds, it's really incredible, especially when they're roosting and performing their aerial ballet right in front of the center here. It's just even the sound, you can hear them all take off. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful spot. They're amazing little birds that have this incredible migratory journey, and it's really special that we get to observe that when they're here. So yeah.
It's fascinating to me to think that this center and the importance of these birds, that it's only been here for a short period of time really, but I'm assuming that these birds have made this their stop for generations.
Yes, so this is something that's been happening for thousands and thousands of years, and we've been here for the past 20 or so years just to make sure that they continue to succeed and continue to be here for thousands and thousands of more years, because unfortunately shorebirds globally are experiencing about a 70% decline in population since the 1970s. So that's why we're here. We're trying to reduce impacts on their survival, like habitat loss and degradation, erosion, unfortunately human disturbance when they're roosting and feeding. So we're really here to make sure that future generations get to appreciate the shorebirds as well.
Yeah, and for a lot of people to realize how special this is and how important it is that we keep them safe and we provide this habitat for them. I know that we did say, like, we're at Johnson's Mills, but Jordan, can you tell people where that is? Because we are kind of off the beaten track for if tourists are coming to New Brunswick or what have you.
People within New Brunswick trying to find it.
I wasn't going to say it.
I will. We had trouble.
Yeah, so it is a little bit of a remote spot. It kind of adds to the beauty of it, I find. But we're about 8 kilometers outside of the village of Dorchester. So the Nature Conservancy of Canada's Shorebird Reserve and Interpretive Centre is about 227 hectares of land in this area. Yeah, we're closest to Dorchester village, but not too far from Sackville, kind of an in-between special little hidden gem, if you will.
Absolutely.
It definitely is. Thank you so much for taking time to share with us some of the importance of this spot.
Yeah, always happy to talk about the shorebirds. So
Is there, quickly before we go, does the Nature Conservancy have social media to this location specifically so people could get an idea of what we've been talking about?
So to learn more, people could visit our website at www.visitjohnsonsmills.ca. NCC does have social media. On Instagram, we're NCC_CNN. Aside from that, we don't have anything specific to this location, but visitors are more than welcome to call our number when the center is open, and we usually provide daily updates on our bird count to keep people informed about what we're seeing.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Our next stop on this tour brings us to Fort Beausejour. I'm Jenna Morton.
And I'm Tosh Taylor, and you'll find us back again with Heather Fraser. Welcome, Heather.
Good day, good day. Where are we now?
We are in one of the windiest spots in New Brunswick, I'm pretty sure. Very near the Nova Scotia border, which is close to my heart. So I'm quite happy right now. So we are at the Parks Canada site, Fort Beausejour. Some people still may call it Fort Cumberland.
Oh.
If you come on a school trip, you'll learn all the history as to why. You can come as a parent chaperone. They will tell you all about why it has two names.
That's very interesting. But we're going to learn why it's an amazing place. So, Heather, how about you take that away?
So part of the Fundy Biosphere Amazing Place program brings you to many sites from all the way from Sackville, New Brunswick, which is where we are very close to now, to St. Martin's. So there's a big area to explore amazing places. But this one really is that connector that we call the Chignecto Isthmus, which is on the other side of this cool wall that we're standing in front of right now. And that is the connector piece of land that brings us between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. And it really is an agriculture land that was diked way back in the early 1800s. They even had the vision back then that it was really important farmland. So they diked it to keep the water going out to the water source that of course we know is tidal, but to also give that area an opportunity for animals to be able to breed and forage and use that land as productive forest land, agriculture land, I mean.
And we saw that today, even. I'm sure, you know, anyone who comes out to the site, you'll see there are cows down on pasture land, but there's a lot that goes into making that accessible for them.
Right, and that was the whole idea when they built. If you notice, when we drove here, we're driving across a bridge, of course, which brings us across the water, but the land base they wanted to keep as land base and not have it always flood. So that is why the dikes were made, to be able to let the water go free and flow, but also be able to use that land productively in the future.
Okay, interesting. And why would that be important for the fort to have?
Well, I think for the fort to have it being grazed so that it's always low impact. So when and you'll see when we turn around and look on the other side of this wall, to have that view that they could see from an army standpoint, and have that view for the distance that they needed to see out to the water's edge, to have that land continually to be groomed without having to pay for it. Basically the cows did the work, but it gave them that area of sight that they really needed to be able to support and protect this great area.
You mentioned the future, and this area is in discussions a lot right now about the future, because it is a very small piece of land that connects New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Can you talk a little bit more about an isthmus and what that is and why it's important?
So the value of the Chignecto Isthmus is that it controls water, but it has many habitats, and those habitats support land animals, because of course land animals can come out across that. It's not just for, you know, basically the cows to be there and forage. So you can still have deer and moose and all the other animals that are in New Brunswick forest work on that corridor, you know, actually be able to travel on that corridor. And then also the aquatic animals that we have, so the beavers and the otters and the muskrats can use that corridor to go from place to place across land between the two provinces. So it's a very important corridor ecologically and I guess economically for agriculture in the province of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia both.
Okay, interesting. These dikes, do they coincide with the dikes, say, on the Alberta County side? the diking that was done across the river.
Yeah, so the diking systems were all done for the same reason, to be able to move that water through in a controlled way. So when the tide come up, it would move it and keep it out so that it wouldn't necessarily flood over the land. There are times for sure it does when we have those super moons that the water is definitely going to come out and flood over the dikes, but it gives that nutrients to that soil and that grass that is growing there to continue to be strong and good for nutrition for those animals that are going to use it for the upcoming season.
Absolutely. The dikes also help with cleaning the water, taking the salt out of the water.
Well, they definitely filter.
Yeah.
Now, whether they take the salt out of the water or not, but they definitely filter, because you'll see on some edges, you'll see cattails and sedges and different of those filter plants that do take nutrients out and in from bodies of water. But whether it takes the salt out, that I'm not. And I wouldn't want to say if I'm not.
I love
right.
that when I get a chance to stump Heather. I love it. I love it.
Because you're moving from the forests, which is what I associate Heather with, closer to the coastline.
Yeah.
So.
That's right. So my expertise for sure is more in the trees and plants than the coastal. But I love to see that when you think of the technology and them being innovative back then, to know their land so well, to say, how do we move this water away so that we can still use this land? You know, it kind of amazes me to see, you know, how many hundreds of years ago they had those ideas to do that, and now we're seeing the successes of what they did for innovation back then is quite exciting for me to see.
I believe it. Okay. On to our next stop today then.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, we'll meet you in Sackville at the Waterfowl Park.
Cool.
And now you've caught us on our last stop of today's episode. We are at the Sackville Waterfowl Marsh. I'm Tosh Taylor.
I'm Jenna Morton, and again we have with us Heather Fraser.
Welcome to Sackville Waterfowl Park.
Thank you.
So what's really cool about this park, it's a 55-acre award-winning park. It has about 160 different species of ducks throughout the season. So once it unthaws in the spring up until it freezes in November, there's about 160 different species of ducks and birds that frequent this beautiful marsh. The other interesting thing is they've done research and some botany studies, and there's over 200 plants, which is kind of what I enjoy, is knowing what kind of plants are next door. So that's kind of cool in this marsh. And one thing you might not know, there's a 3.5 kilometer trail that actually runs around this entire wetland, and it actually on the other side of the road next to the Tantramar School is part of the Trans-Canada Trail that you can actually walk or bike. And the Tantramar School as well, the high school, has a wetland program. So grades 4, 5, and 6 can actually come from Moncton and surrounding areas and take their wetland program that utilizes all the research and info that they have here in the Waterfowl Park. So it's a wonderful educational opportunity right across the road.
What a fantastic resource to have right in the heart of a community, because we're in Sackville, right? Mount Allison University is just behind us. You can see spires if you look really close through the cattails. And to know that it's being used so well by the community is just fantastic.
And it's great for the students when you think of it too, when they come in September and they just, you know, they've been in studying all day, to be able to just basically walk across Main Street and get onto a trail like this where they can walk and just listen and see the different birds that frequent our Acadian forest. So it is a really nice place to have in their backyard.
You mentioned 200 different species of plants, and because we know you're a plant person, tell me which one you're most excited about that's in here.
Well, I love the cattails, which is right behind us, and we have tried cattails before because, of course, you know, they are edible. So cattails are an exciting plant for me, and it's also the ones that are floating. So I love to see like the different types of water lilies and so on, because different duck species love the water lilies to get under, and I'm sure there's an exciting array of fish species that are probably here too, which is why in some of those taller trees I see over there's probably a few osprey that love this area as well, because again, that would be their food source. So it really, this whole wetland enriches the whole community with not only ducks and birds, but wildlife and harriers as well. So I think it's just wonderful to have that part of nature in your community that you can go and explore.
So Heather, what does make this an amazing place?
So I think the difference in its community, which you mentioned, it's 55 acres. It's in the back doorstep of a community for walking, and there's boardwalks and so on. To have the diversity, I think, is the biggest thing, and that's why it's probably an amazing place to have those 160 different species of ducks and birds that frequent this marsh throughout the year, and then have that diversity of plant life that when you look at, like what you said, you've got a university right next door. What a nice laboratory that they can use and explore and study those wildlife species and plants. I think is a really wonderful resource to have, which is probably why it is another one of our amazing places.
I also think too, to see a town embrace a marsh area, a lot of towns would turn their back on it. To see a town embrace it as well is incredible.
Absolutely, and I think they see, and more communities are starting to see the value of those non-productive, which they would call it a non-productive forest land, but it's a very productive wetland. So that's the beauty of the community, recognizing that we have a resource that's here that we can utilize, and now with having the Tantramar School right across the way that actually developed a wetland program because of this marsh and wetland area, I think that's exceptional.
Absolutely. So you'll have to come down and check it out for yourself. It is accessible to anybody. We literally pulled up, walked, 10 steps down a set of stairs, and we were here. So we absolutely think you should check this out. It's available to everybody, and I want to thank you for listening into today's episode. We hope you enjoyed this part of New Brunswick anyway, and you'll have to stick around for other episodes where Heather and Jenna and I and a few other places we go and we check out the rest of the Fundy Biosphere Reserve. Nope. We check out the rest of the Fundy Biosphere region. Today we found ourselves just outside of St. Martin's. We're at Quaco Head. Joining us today, we've got Heather Fraser. Heather, thanks for joining us.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
Now,
on this windy day.
It is windy. It is windy. I would love it if you would give us some more information about this amazing location.
So this is number one on our amazing places within the UNESCO designated Fundy Biosphere Reserve, and this is Quaco Head Lighthouse. So from what I understand, the original lighthouse was built in 1855, and it was actually over on the little island that we see submerged, or actually emerged right now because the tide is low. And they moved it over here in 1966. So all lighthouses, if you notice, are always on a point where it's high up, the visibility is beautiful. You can see basically from one side to the other because, again, remember there was ships coming in and out of this coast. If you look across the way, you'll see an island. It's called Isle Haute, and it's actually part of Nova Scotia. It's next to the Chignecto Isthmus, and it actually is part of the coastline of the Upper Bay of Fundy as well. Wow. So the beauty of this spot really is that it's showcasing St. Martin's beaches, showcasing the beauty of the Upper Bay of Fundy when we have those tides coming up and going down twice a day. It's a beautiful spot.
It's really quite a fabulous spot. It is very windy because we're out on the point, but it was also very easy to get to and very easy to find. So if you're looking for this lovely kind of vista where, it's very easy for anyone in your party to walk to, this is going to be a great spot that it's worth that little detour off the main path that you might look at for the scenic routes in this area.
Yes, the parking is a little small, but it's great for picnic. If you wanted to have a picnic or come down, and I'm sure when it's calmer and not as windy as today, there would be some incredible birds that would be coming through because the landscape has a lot of softwood species. So we'd have some of the hawks and some of the eagles that would be here that you would get to view. So I think the viewing for birds would be nice on a sunny, maybe warmer day, but a beautiful spot to stop.
Sure.
No, and you just have to.
It's beautiful. You just have to dress for the weather.
Exactly.
And there's lots of interesting things. We were taking a walk around. We saw lovely flowers and fiddleheads, and watch out for the thistles. Tosh will tell you. Raspberry canes. It's really. I'm pretty sure I saw some blueberry bushes. Mm-hmm. It's a great spot. Do you happen to have any insight on the other foundation? So we're standing here next to a working lighthouse. Mm-hmm. There's another foundation here that's a great little vantage point to sit from. Do we have any idea what
the old photo showed that the original lighthouse was bigger?
Right.
So I suspect there was more parts because it wasn't just the lighthouse floor, like you basically go up and that's where your light is. There was actually a place to view. Like there was a viewing, the older pictures show there was a viewing area. So I expect that the original lighthouse would have been bigger, and there would have been almost like a quarters for the lighthouse keeper to be able to stay. So this one is quite a bit different. It's just a square.
Serves its purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
One of the things that I noticed was there are little trails that are cut into the grass along the edge of the water. Beautiful. If you're going to bring your children, though, I would make sure you've got a hand on them because you are pretty close to the water. But it's stunning. The views are spectacular. You both went out onto the rock face there. I was not so daring. I stood back and took pictures. But it's definitely a bring the whole family kind of situation. It's beautiful and worth seeing St. Andrews from this angle.
Exactly.
I
St.
mean,
Martin's.
worth seeing St. Martin's from this angle.
I was like, there's a great view, but I can't quite see St. Andrews from here.
And there are people that love to do, in combination with our covered bridge tours, they really love to do the lighthouse tours.
Absolutely.
So this would be one if you're out and about in the Upper Bay of Fundy area, and Fundy National Park is one of your stops. This would be one of the lighthouses that you would want to take in, because it is showing that rugged coastline along the Upper Bay of Fundy towards St. Martin's, and it's a beautiful, unique lighthouse to view when you're out exploring.
Yeah, it was wonderful just coming down the pathway. You could see the light coming through, which is one of the benefits of not coming on a really bright sunny day.
Right.
If it's a bit overcast, you're going to see that light just as you're even coming down the trail to the lighthouse.
And one thing I would mention, that there's a caution on the actual building itself, is that if it was foggy, which it was in Moncton when we left, then you would hear this before you would see it, because the foghorn would be definitely making a good loud sound. So you might not be as close to it as we are here today.
Excellent. Well, let's take the tour into St. Martin's and see what else it has to offer.
Perfect.
I think it's safe to say that probably one of the most photographed, iconic, recognizable spots of the amazing places is where we are right now at the St. Martin's Sea Caves. Do you think I'm right there, Heather?
I think you are absolutely correct.
It's absolutely phenomenal. If you've ever seen any tourism literature about New Brunswick, you've probably seen this image as well as the Hopewell Rocks. Let's talk a little bit about what the Sea Caves are and what people need to know about coming here to visit, because this is one where you do really need to plan ahead.
Yes, and for this one specifically, it really is about the tides. And anything that you know and have heard about the Bay of Fundy, it really is the highest tides in the world. And one thing that I learned about this is that all the water from other streams coming out of oceans does not equal what comes out of the Bay of Fundy around the world every day. So when you think of that amount of water, and with water has a lot of force. So one thing that they always recommend here is that you pay very close attention to the tides, and of course come when the tides are out, because that's the beauty of being able to go inside the caves, which when you kayak or canoe here, you're canoeing and kayaking at a high tide. So you're actually not seeing the caves that you see when the tide is out. So that's the beauty of coming this time.
So we've come here today just after the lowest point of low tide. The water is slowly starting to creep back up, but it's still enough that people are here exploring, and you can go into a cave.
Yes, which is very cool, because in kayaking, sometimes when you do kayak here, there's a couple of spots along the coastline in the Upper Bay of Fundy where you can rent kayaks and go with a guide, and you go usually when the tide is either halfway or going up and then receding, because you do want to be able to have that opportunity to feel the waves and actually see the caves that you don't see when it's at full tide. So that is the beauty of being here today, is we will be able to go inside the actual caves.
Another thing that I love about St. Martin's and the Sea Caves is when we are at low tide, the vastness of this rocky beach that is in front of us. If you are a rock collector, as I am, and I think a lot of people actually are, I see people filling their pockets as they're walking around here today, it is remarkable to see the sea stumbled stones, because they are round and they're spectacular.
And covered in barnacles.
Yes.
When the first time that I brought my kids here, that was what caught their eye, was because it was low tide, so many of the stones that were exposed were covered in barnacles, and we had such a great conversation about what they were and what they did and what was going to happen as the tide came back in. Also, St. Martin's is just a beautiful village, all kinds of places, including some great restaurants right here where we're at. So definitely a great destination that you can make a trip out of. what else in terms of the amazing places do people need to know about St. Martin's and the Sea Caves?
Well, for sure, if you don't have one of these amazing places brochures in your car, when you're out traveling around, you should have one. This is number 2 out of 50 amazing places that you can visit. The other thing I would say about this place and all along the coast, it could be 30 degrees in Moncton. It's going to be at least 20 degrees here, or less.
Yes.
Because it was, what did we say, 15 or something, and it was like we could almost see our breath at
Yes.
Quaco Head Lighthouse. So that's one thing to know, is that it's always cooler, which is lovely along the coast.
And I have to say, though, it's warmed up considerably from being at the lighthouse, which was stop number 1, just to stop number 2 here at the cave. So,
Yes.
so definitely, yes, dress in layers, whatever time of year it is that you're coming to visit.
Yeah.
And the other beauty that I would say when you're coming into St. Martin's is just stop a little bit before you come across the double covered bridge and just see the ships and the boats on the sea floor, and visualize in another so many hours that those boats will be at dock level. Like, that's always incredible to me, to walk on the floor with a group and then do a circle and come back when the tide is in, and it's not at all what they seen 5-6 hours earlier. So that's an incredible piece of the discovery along the upper Bay of Fundy.
The same thing could go for where we are right now. If you were to leave here and head down the Funny Park Trailway, which we are about to do, you could come back into St. Martin's this way and notice that the cave is completely gone, covered by water. You can see how high the water line is behind us. It is quite spectacular to think that you are sitting on an ocean floor right at this moment. So stop number 2.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Number 2.
And so before the tide rises anymore, let's go check out the cave.
Check out the cave. Yes, absolutely.
Heather, we have made it to Fuller Falls along the Fundy Trail Parkway. We're now inside the Parkway Trail system. Can you tell us what makes Fuller Falls an amazing place?
Well, if we look to our right, we'll be able to see the falls. This is a 35-foot falls. And for us, we just talked about the fact that we were here many times last year. I was here in October. Jenna was here in July. The falls water that's coming from the streams that's feeding this falls is very low. So the actual water coming over the falls is quite a bit less than it was when I was out here in October. But it's totally fed by brooks that run through Fundy Park and find their way to low spots that, of course, are going to make their way to the ocean, to the upper Bay of Fundy.
I think what's really fascinating about this space is how accessible this really is. It's a bit of a tricky walk down to the falls. You can see them from the top though, so if you have someone with mobility issues, you can get a good vantage point. Not quite the one you're seeing behind us right now, but talk a little bit about what it takes to get to where we are.
Right, so most of the trails through the Fundy Trail Parkway are accessible. They're just rated easy, moderate, and of course extreme. This one is easy, even though it is a pitch. But what's beautiful about this is they've put in a really nice boardwalk on stairs that has rail, like chain fence that we can hold on to as we go up. Coming down's not so bad, but going up is a little bit trickier. But it's definitely worth the walk down. And what I can honestly say that I feel is when you're at the top, there's a definite difference in temperature. By the time you get here, it's cooler. So again, for those days when we're in town and it's 30 degrees in the summer in August and we're hot, what are we going to do today? Let's go on the Fundy Trail Parkway and let's do some hikes on some beaches, which we can see right here from Fuller Falls, and let's feel that coolness of the air that you feel when you're at a falls here in Fundy National Park.
No, that's right. Now, it is an amazing place here for the Fundy Biosphere region, but also it's one of a few waterfalls inside the Fundy Trail Parkway. It's the first one that you'll hit, and we all highly recommend it. 5 stars?
Yes, actually, I would say the only thing, if you are a waterfall person who's looking for that experience of hiking and swimming at a falls, this is not the one for you. This doesn't have a pool at the bottom that you can swim in.
Nor can you access it.
Yes, but you can get here on this vantage point if you want to take some photos, if you want to just see a really interesting falls, this is a great choice. And again, the stairs, there are stairs, but I know my kids did them when they were maybe 8 or 9 years old. So it's very accessible if you have any mobility.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I would add is the Fundy Trail Parkway is really go at your leisure, go at your own time. And I find a place like this, like today, where it's just really us, just to sit and have that peace of mind and just listen. And the sounds that you will hear other than the waterfall, you know, the various bird species and so on that was here, it just can bring you grounded and give you some peace of mind, you know, to get out of the city and feel like you're part of that Wabanaki Acadian forest that is within this UNESCO designated amazing place.
A beautiful spot if you're a reader or you're someone who likes to sketch. There's some benches here on this platform where we're standing. This would be a great spot. It's very quiet. People who do come to visit kind of tend to come, take a look, and go away again. So you could spend an entire afternoon here and feel very, very peaceful and a lot of solitude even with people coming through. And you can see some other vantage points as well here than just the falls.
And for you, Jenna, when you want to take time for yourself to write your book, it's a good place for you to come.
It would be a fantastic place.
It would.
All right, we mentioned being grounded, but maybe let's go get off the ground at our next stop. We're going to go check out the big Salmon River.
We are now at one of the other most popular spots along the Fundy Parkway trail system. I think this is one that a lot of people, again, if you haven't been here in person, you have likely seen photos. We are near the interpretive center for Salmon River.
Big Salmon River.
The Big Salmon River. So Heather, tell us a little bit about the significance of this as an amazing place.
So this is an amazing place because it has historic value and historic interest. And for me specifically, I love this spot because it is about the trees. It's about the economy. It's about fish and timber is how it got salt and fur, if you know that the programs that is put on in Fundy National Park. And if you look to the landscape here, it's a diversity of hardwoods and softwoods. So of course the softwoods are the trees that would have been harvested over 100, 150 years ago. And the river, the significance of the river is that they would have, it's called driving the logs down the river to get to the spot where they were going to be milled, which there was a little mill here, but the biggest one that is most popular and most people know about is the one at Point Wolf, because it was before it would go to the huge lumber yard. But the logs would have been, they call it log driving down the river. So this river today, looking at this river today, very, very low. Of course, they would do that in the spring when the water levels are coming up after the snow. They would cut the trees in the winter so that it's least impact on the forest soil, and then they would move those logs when we had lots of runoff, which, wow, how things have changed over 100 or 150 years.
It's hard to imagine standing here today that this river was flowing that quickly, because it is still spring. We're here in May that we're recording this, and you could not drive logs down this river right now.
You cannot drive a stick down this river right now.
But it is still beautiful because you can see the riverbed, and you can use your imagination to think about how incredible this river would have once been, and to imagine people driving the logs down. That is one of the neatest things to see. Even if you've only seen photos in history books, it is pretty incredible to watch somebody literally run on top of a log to get it down the river, and they would take it down to the Bay of Fundy and then take it on to mills to make more ships.
Right, exactly. And when you think of Point Wolf and even some of the coastline here, there was up to 500 vessels that were actually on the shoreline of the Bay of Fundy, and a lot of them were made from the wood from this upper Bay of Fundy region. So that's sort of when you look across the hills and you see, you know, some bigger trees, some smaller trees, more trees coming up, I can just envision how, and it was all done by hand. It was all done by hand with men with saws, and probably back then buck saws before we had chainsaws. So basically labor to cut the trees and then get them to the river, and then, like you said, that agility to be able to walk on them and guide them down the river with poles is just incredible.
It's fascinating to picture what was happening here not that long ago, really.
In probably our grandfather's time, for sure. They would have seen and heard and been part of that boat building industry. Because St. John, I mean, that's how they were built, was on the legacy of wood that came from the upper Bay of Fundy to build those vessels.
One of the other aspects that stands out about this location is not technically part of the amazing places, but we have to mention the bridges you can see behind us here. There are two bridges that you can see behind us. One is a bridge that anyone might drive over if they make this journey, and the other, if you don't have worries about bridges and heights. It's a very, very neat experience to go across the suspension bridge that's here. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And that was put in mainly because people were wanting to get to the other side. And because the river, again, if you can envision the river being a river, you know, having feet, you know, not just 2 or 3 feet of water, but actually be, and a fast flowing river because it's making its way to the ocean. So it was really put in for accessibility to get people from one side to the other. And then it became part of, well, we need to do trail. It's one thing to be able to make it across foot traffic, but let's make a trail so that we can explore more of the area. So it really was accessibility, and they wanted to do something different, not just be the typical wooden, which you see a lot in the park. So having that suspension bridge is kind of fun to be able to go across and go up and down in the middle when other people are on the ends. We've probably all done that as not only children, we do it as adults.
But it is one of those things to keep in mind if you're coming to travel, because not everyone enjoys that. I know one of my children was, nope, there is no way we are crossing this. That's just how it's going to be.
Yes.
So sometimes that's how life goes.
Yeah,
it is.
Exactly. Sometimes you bring your parent here and he doesn't want to go that far either. So it's totally understandable. But the view even from this end of the suspension bridge is really cool to see. And there is deeper waters on the other side of the suspension bridge. So you could go for a little dip on that side if you needed to cool down. The sun's starting to come out on us now and it's starting to warm things up. So maybe we'll go take a dip. No?
I'm not taking a dip today, but sure. I can share some photos of my husband doing it the last time we visited here, but it's a very popular spot in the summer for people to come and cool down and spend the day. And I have to say that, you know, you mentioned about how fast flowing the water is, and even now with the water low, you can tell it is a very fast moving system. So it's a really lovely spot to visit for sure.
Yes, lots to still explore in Fundy National Park and on the Upper Bay of Fundy.
Excellent. Should we go show one of the most amazing beaches in New Brunswick as far as I'm concerned?
I love this beach.
All right, off we go to Long Beach. We've made it to our final stop of the day today. Heather, we're at Long Beach. Tell us why Long Beach makes it an amazing place.
Let me tell you, it's because throughout the Fundy Trail Parkway there are many beaches that you can stop and explore through a trail system, through a waterfall system, but this one is actually the longest one that you can walk and explore. And also one thing that's interesting is the point of the bay where the water comes in every 12 hours. It comes in through the bay and comes to the point, which is just right here, and then back out every 12 hours. So it's significant because of the location of where Long Beach is, the fact that it is longer than any other beach, and the fact that this is where the water comes in and then recedes back out to the Bay of Fundy.
So this is one where you would see that impact of the timing of the tides very, very prominently. Some places, you can tell the tide changes, but you don't see that impact necessarily very visually.
Right.
But here, the tide doesn't have to be very far in for you to see the difference in what's happening with the beach.
And if you can remember where we started off and when we were even at the sea caves, how we walked and walked and walked before, and then got to the sea caves. Well, here you can see that the shoreline is fairly close actually to where the water is coming in now. So the distance and how fast it comes in is quicker when you're in a point, more so than in a wider spot like we've seen at the sea caves for sure.
Excellent. Now, what you can see right now is mostly a rocky beach, but one of the things about Long Beach is it is the longest, if not one of the longest, sandy beaches along the whole Bay of Fundy coast, I believe.
Yes, and that's the beauty because we always wear, of course, hiking boots. So to be able to take those off and walk in the sand like you were at Parley Beach or one of the other beaches that most people know about, that's the beauty of this beach, is that you can actually go in your bare feet and walk the sand when the tide is out.
This is my first trip here, so I'm just like, I just want to keep looking at all the things. This looks like it's just such a fantastic beach for beachcombing for people. We've seen quite a few people out here today already.
What I love about it with all of these spots is check your tide times before you leave. Bring a lunch because once you come, what you've read or what you've heard other people talk about, it's not at all till you get here.
Yes.
So bring a lunch. There's lots of spots here to have a picnic lunch. Take your time to do some beach combing, looking for fossils, looking for maybe birds that are migratory that are coming in, and just take that soulness and that peace of mind and the quiet. Just the sound of the waves coming in can be really nice on on a nice day like this out on the Bay of Fundy. No fog and hardly any breeze, which is quite incredible to be on the shoreline like this and it be as warm as it is today in May.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it is such a long beach, you really could, when the tide is out, walk point to point and enjoy a beautiful day doing so. But at this location, it's not just walking the beach that you can do. There are some hiking trails up to some lookouts that you could go and discover up there as well. And they have a nice little washroom stop here, which for a lot of people, if you're traveling with your children or if you're traveling with me, is very important to have. So it is a beautiful stop. It's an excellent rest place. Now, most people do know that, and therefore they have an overflow parking up on the top of the trail up there. So just a heads up, it can get pretty busy, but once you see it, you'll see why.
And the other thing too that I would say, if you do have children, always when you come to the Bay of Fundy, if you have access to bringing a kite, it's a wonderful spot to have a kite and do some test flying or bubbles, whatever, because you will have that little bit of breeze that we're starting to see now, and to be able to fly a kite and just do different things that you can do when you're next to the Bay of Fundy than what you can do in town. It's
great reminder. And this is a fantastic spot, just thinking in terms of people who are looking for those trails that are a little bit easier in terms of mobility. This is very, very gentle, not a very long walk from the parking to the beach area, and just very, very nice wide groomed trails. If you're someone with, walkers or strollers, something like this, I can see why this is such a popular location.
Well, Heather, it has been a blast.
It has been so much fun. And how diverse is it? From starting where we started, Quaco Head, Sea Caves, Long Beach, Fuller Falls, the beauty is just incredible throughout the Fundy Trail Parkway and beyond in the Upper Bay of Fundy. So we encourage all to get out and enjoy, and trust me, once you come once, you will be back.
Excellent. We'll be moving on to the next part of our Amazing Places series. You'll have to watch to find out where we are next.